So I want to welcome the amazing Julie North to our Mind Body Gym podcast. Um, I've been knowing this beautiful woman for quite some time in a different ways and working with her, but just more recently within the past, what is it, 8, 9 months that
It
we've been
hasn't been
working
that
together?
long. 6 maybe?
6 months and twice a week and we've really gotten a chance to get to know each other on a more personal level. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining my experiences because it's been awesome and amazing. So, Julie, I would like for you to just kind of share with us your journey of self-discovery and embracing who you are,
Well,
embracing
yeah.
who you are.
Well,
So just tell us a little bit about you. Yeah.
thanks for having me. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
so my journey. You want me to talk about recently the things that have been going on?
Whatever you want to share, whatever comes to mind,
So,
people want to know.
so I was born a medium,
Okay.
and that skill set
Mm-hmm.
from childhood produced a tremendous amount of stress for me
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis. I never learned how to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to live with it.
Mm.
And my baseline of stress is pretty high because of all of the input that I get on a regular basis. But you learn to navigate that.
Can you pause for one moment and just kind of
Yeah.
explain to people, like, what does medium mean?
So um, all mediums are psychics. Not
Okay.
all psychics are mediums.
Understood.
A medium has the capacity to communicate with something that's not in a body. So typically, when most people think of a medium, they think of someone who communicates with people who are deceased.
Mm.
But and not all mediums can communicate with all the things. So sometimes a
Okay.
medium has a range that they're in, like they maybe can only communicate with deceased people on the other side, or maybe they can only communicate with someone's guides or some type of entity, or maybe they communicate with animals. So
Mm.
animal communicators are mediums, plant communicators are mediums. So there's a whole range of things that can fall into. In my case, I haven't found something yet that I haven't been able to communicate with.
Okay.
Um, and without a skill set for being able to turn that off, like it was a lot. So I had great parents. They were
Mm.
amazing. But the other side, like from my childhood, was always talking to me.
Okay.
So when I would think, like, why is Billy doing that thing? Any thought that I would have a question like that, the other side would answer.
Mm.
And as an adult, it often feels like you're going through life with, a small group of parents that are helicopter parenting, constantly commenting on everything you do, think, say, correcting components of my language. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
language correction because words mean different things to different people. And the
Yeah.
point of communication, if you're the communicator, the point is to be understood. If you're the listener, your point is to understand. So when I'm communicating, even in casual conversations, my language is usually getting corrected by the other side because my dictionary is different than whoever's listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they will say no to particular words, and I'll kind of run it through a thesaurus in my head till I find a word that they're okay with. And it works that way for readings too. So when I do readings for people, I get a lot of corrections. They correct most sentences in one or two places,
Yeah.
and it's always almost always in the background. So sometimes I miss some, and then they tell me that I've made a mistake, and I just have to go back and correct that. But it is a big part of how we communicate.
Right.
It's important, particularly in a reading, to make sure that the listener is getting the accurate intended message, not just my best guess at it.
Mm.
And we think of ourselves often as being very clear in communication. We'll say, "Oh, I love you," or "Oh, this felt horrible," but those words are vague. Love
Right.
is vague. It means so many different things to different people. Horrible is different to different people based off of your range of experiences, and the other side's pretty particular and specific. So it's a lot of corrections and clarifying, and like they had me read the dictionary when I was in middle school.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And then later in my life, I realized like why that was important because I was going to be doing this, but I didn't know that at the time. So yeah, my daily work is I teach. I haven't taught for a little while, but we're just getting ready to get back into teaching some classes. I'm doing a mentorship class, but I do one-on-one client readings too. A lot of like what's going on in my life, and a lot of health things. I work with a lot of doctors and therapists around the world.
Yeah.
88 countries, I think, was my last count of
Wow.
like where I have clients. And if they're unwell and they can't
Mhm.
figure out what's wrong with them, or whatever the treatment is not working,
Mhm.
doctors will call about patients, or they'll send patients to me, that sort of thing. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of medical things that go on there. And in my work, I am really faced with the thing that you are frequently talking about, this connection between the mind, the body, the spirit, however you want
Mhm.
to frame that.
Right.
They're intrinsically tied together. And my understanding of the human experience, the human system, is there's kind of, if you crudely break it out into four parts, three of
Mhm.
those are non-physical. So in your
Okay.
energetic body, you would have an intellectual body, which will start its sentences with I think or I know.
Okay.
Spiritual body, which will start its sentences with like I believe or I have faith in. An emotional body, which will usually start its sentences with I feel or I fear. So
Okay.
that's kind of like the board of directors of you.
Mm.
And then the physical body is the body of action,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So in an ideal situation, each person would be incredibly conscious of what they think, what they believe, and what
Right.
they feel. All of those
Okay.
things. They might think multiple things, and those thoughts might be in conflict with their beliefs, which also might be in conflict with how they feel. They might know that Mary didn't mean to hurt their feelings, but they
Mhm.
still feel mad at Mary for hurting their feelings, and they feel hurt. Like you can have cognitive dissonance in this little board of directors. And what happens in the body is, because the body is the temporary vehicle for the soul,
Yes.
the body's built to follow,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't lead, it follows. So
Wow.
whatever's going on in your board of directors, your soul, if you will, for your human experience, that's going to emulate in some way in your body.
Mm.
And a balanced board of directors will typically have a balanced body. Most of us don't have a balanced board of directors because the culture doesn't teach that. So
Yeah.
in the current westernized culture, the focus and value is put on the intellect. What do you think? What do you know? Are you smart? Are you
Yes.
stupid? There's a lot of judgments around intellect. How you feel is irrelevant. And we teach our kids, stop crying. Mary didn't mean to hurt your feelings. What
Yeah.
are you crying about? Don't get mad. So there's a lot of suppression of the
Mhm.
emotional system,
Which
and
like
people,
which leads to, like, the whole uh dis-ease leads to disease kind of thing, or what you're saying.
yeah, the body will emulate, right? So what
Balance. Yeah.
happens in this situation is you are raised with a value of intellect, and you're taught not to be angry. For example, don't be angry, don't be mad, don't yell, don't be mad. You suppress those. That gets suppressed in your system. So you might make a lot of smart or logical choices given the culture, but emotionally, your emotional body is suppressed, and
Mhm.
you hold that in the body. So you're out
Mhm.
of balance, and the suppressed emotion, the congestion, will create illness, unwellness.
Wow.
Not just like, hey, I feel miserable, I'm sad, but disease, cancer, or suppressed immune system make you really susceptible to viruses and those sorts of things. And we all have a genetic makeup too, so that can play into that. But I see a lot of things where people will have a gene, like maybe they
Yes.
have the genetics for a congestive heart failure, but
Right.
that gene can kind of go either way. So if the soul didn't sign up for congestive heart failure, and you have, or something that would be served by congestive heart failure,
Mhm.
but you have the gene for it, the free will choices that you make in your life, how you think, believe, and feel, how balanced you are within the self, is going to make that gene active or non-active in your
So that's
system.
kind of like that epigenetics of carrying things on. kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Well,
Got it.
there's that. I mean, there's a lot to that. You have your genetics in your DNA,
Right.
and then you have your souls. If you look at time from a linear standpoint, which is how human beings experience it, most people would call those past lives. So you'll
Okay.
have your or karma, and so
Okay.
you'll have things in those experiences. For the ease of conversation, we'll call them past lives that
Yes.
would, like, so that's kind of like karmic DNA that also might be affecting your current situation too. But you, as a free will human being,
Hmm.
can make decisions that change those situations.
I mean,
Mm.
you have just dropped a lot of knowledge bombs right there. And just like, you having to know the language and, having this skill set, like, how did you come to embrace who you are, right?
Did not did
Okay,
not
so tell,
embrace it.
okay,
I
so tell us
I
about that.
fought it. I didn't want to do any of this. It
Mm,
was really difficult. Um, it was really difficult. And then I grew up in a pretty small town,
mm-hmm.
and my from a protective standpoint, my mom was kind of like, just don't tell people. There'll be
Okay.
burning crosses in your front yard, um, because that's the culture that my mom grew up in, right? And so
Yeah.
I can
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that protection, but like I kept that to myself to the extent that my parents didn't even really know the full extent of what I could do until I was an adult, had moved away, and actually moved back. Um,
Understood.
and I would, if I didn't express what was being told to me,
Mm-hmm.
I became distressed. So,
Understood.
as a young person in school, like people's parents would just start telling me things, like I and I understood, and then I'm just telling them things and they would say like, "Oh, you're so wise for 14," and I'm thinking, okay, it's not, but I couldn't say, like, oh no, actually that's your guide saying that. I just didn't say those things. And then I ran restaurants for quite some time, and that was an outstanding avenue to share information without like saying, hey, this is what I do. When my
Mm-hmm.
when my kids were little, I mean, I didn't want to do this. It's a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of ethics, and I'm probably most deeply seated in ethics.
Right.
And I didn't want to cause harm. Anything that can cure can kill. Anything that can heal can harm. Language, especially the English language, incredibly muddy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a minefield of navigation, and I didn't want to do it. But it just
Wow.
kind of kept showing up, and people, I would do it for my friends, and then friends of friends, and it just kind of got out of hand, and so I kind of threw my hands in the air. I was actually pretty angry at the other side, and I said, "Fine, fine. If you want me, this is a totally true story. If you want
Mm-hmm.
me to do this, you make it happen. I'm not doing any of it." Which is ridiculous because by that point in my life, I mean, I know that whatever they want me to do, like that's what's going to happen. So it was kind of a
Absolutely.
silly temper tantrum to have. Fine.
Well, it
I'm not.
just it just shows that you are of the flesh too. Like, you also
Yeah.
signed up for a soul's purpose, and
Yeah.
you also have that way in which people who don't want to do something can react, right?
Yeah, the soul signs up for things. The soul has an agenda, and so my soul has an agenda, just like anyone else's. It has things that
Right.
it wants to learn, or the purpose of the human experience is to expand through experience. And it might sign up for classes, kind of like going to a college class.
Mhm.
Maybe a person signs up for relationship abandonment 101 and some midlife poverty 204, and I'm going to heal people with my voice, or whatever it is that a person signs up for. And one of the things that I learned in my life is that I cannot change what my soul signed up for.
Absolutely.
But the vast majority of my human experience is not something that's necessarily on the soul's chosen agenda. So I'm going to expand through those experiences, but I can change most of that. And for the things that are on my soul's agenda, so like let's just make up an example and say that I signed up for Relationship Abandonment 101. I'm not going to be able to not go through at least a perception of relationship abandonment, but how I go through it, how long it takes me, how much I fight it, beat my head on the wall, those things are my free will choice. So
Right.
I have a tremendous amount of impact. Any human being would have a tremendous amount of impact on their experience, even if they don't know, is this a required experience on my soul path?
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of look at everything like, okay, are my board of directors all being heard,
Okay.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
honored, which most of the time we're saying, well, I know this is like difficulties in my life. Like there's
Right.
emotional difficulties. So I might have an emotional difficulty with someone, and I might know that they're not good for me in whatever, however you
Mm-hmm.
want to frame that. That doesn't really use terms like good and bad, but maybe that experience with that person doesn't bring me health, good
Right.
mental health. So I might know that. I might even believe that. But my heart can still like love that person and want to be around that person. And so then you have this cognitive dissonance. And so how do you get that board of directors to all have an equal say without, you know, two sides voting the emotional body out? Then you're just suppressing. So it's a interesting process of learning how to honor all of those components,
Mm.
because when you don't, you get unwell, which is one of the things that happened to me, even with all the things that I know. You know,
Yeah.
I got cancer, stage 4 cancer, and went through a bunch of surgeries and sailed through all of that. It was because I did what the other side told me to do
Absolutely.
at that point. But it created a tremendous, I mean, this is part of how I came to be working with you too, created a tremendous amount of scar tissue in my body. I think I've had more than 15 surgeries and surgical procedures, and bilateral double mastectomy, and you know, it's just a tremendous amount of scar tissue. And then radiation, for anyone that doesn't know, radiation causes all the tissue to tighten, and it
Mm-hmm.
just stays tightened. So a lot of that tissue that got irradiated is not really ever going to flex like other tissue will. So I needed, and it causes the body to be out of balance. I only got radiation on the left side of my body,
Mm-hmm.
and it caused a really big imbalance between my right side and my left side, a lot of scar tissue, and my mental health took a hit, my physical system, I lost all my strength, really, just from just constantly being in some kind of a surgical recovery. And so then I came to you because I was out of balance on multiple fronts, and because the other side told me to come to you.
That
So
was just wonderful.
so so the other side actually told me to come to you long time before I came,
Okay.
but you're across town from me, and I
Mm-hmm.
was in a temper tantrum, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not going across town. It's always been really, really hard. I have a problem putting my shoes on.
Yeah.
If I get my shoes on and get out the door, I'm okay. But the act of putting my shoes on to get out the door is like
Mm-hmm.
a huge hurdle for me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm not going across town. Like that was just such an extension of putting my shoes on. I wasn't going to do it. And finally, I was like, fine, I'll go. You know,
Yeah.
and because I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I couldn't get over my own, hang up. So plowed through that and started coming, to see you. And one of the really unexpected things about working with you, and I had a trainer years ago who was great, and he got my body in shape, and
Mm-hmm.
I got strong, but it wasn't what we're doing, what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first started coming to you, and you're having me do these walking exercises, and I would go home and I would think, we're not doing anything. Like, I'm not sore. And then one day, literally, it was just a couple of weeks, and then one day my body just shrunk. It was like someone had sucked the air out of me with a straw, And I was like, what happened? But what was happening was these hip movements. We store a lot of trauma in our hips, in our
Mm-hmm.
pelvis area. And there's exercises out there for people, somatic work, that they can do that too. But like this regular process of moving my body, and you were working with me to get my right and my left balanced. And then
Mm-hmm.
also I had the body will also do some crossover. So sometimes when you have a right shoulder problem, you'll have a left hip problem, or it'll, and so you were doing all of this work that wasn't like me powerlifting weights or, like
Mm-hmm.
dying on a treadmill, but the system got aligned
Mhm.
pretty quickly and started moving. And when the body started moving, then the energy moved, because energy doesn't move well on a tight system.
Right.
Tight because it's just muscularly tight, or tight because it's dehydrated, or both. So,
Mhm.
dehydration causes tightness, and energy moves better through a hydrated system. So I was tight. I had all this scar tissue. I wasn't moving well. And once everything started moving, then my energy started moving better too. And baggage was coming up. And I was already going through, like, this has been a really rough year, like the roughest year of my life. And not because of cancer. I was really, really already through the cancer things, but just a tremendous amount of personal stuff going on this year that created an emotional upheaval that was like, I felt like I was trying to fight my way out of a bag that I couldn't
Mm.
get out of. And the movement that we were doing in the gym just broke that stuff up. And as those emotions moved, and I wasn't having, like, meltdowns every day at the gym,
No.
but and that can happen. It just wasn't my particular experience,
Mhm.
but definitely, a long span of stress, that I've carried in my body for a long time, relationship
Mhm.
difficulties, abandonment, betrayal, feeling unseen, feeling isolated, like all of these things that were stored in the system, were coming up and moving, and then the body responds.
Yeah.
So it becomes a self-feeding system. It's always self-feeding, but what
Okay.
direction is it going? Is it going towards compaction? Is it going towards fluidity? Like, is
Mm.
it still or fluid? And so coming to see you twice a week uh, created the movement in my system that it needed.
Yeah.
And I made a post about this yesterday on my Facebook, and one of the things that I said about, I could tell people really easily, like, oh, I have a trainer, and
Mhm.
everybody would understand why I've thinned out and why I look better and why I've gotten my strength back, and that would make total sense to them. But it would really be a disservice to you, to say that. I mean, I don't know what else other word to call you, but there's so much more that's going on in those experiences at the gym with you than just getting some kind of physical strength, because there's been a tremendous amount of energy balancing that's happened in my system, and fluidity of energy, fluidity of emotions, and those things kind of self-feed. Now, to some extent, I had such a backlog, a log jam, that
Mhm.
I've been kind of a hot mess,
Mhm.
through some of that, but it's still moving. So what I
Yes.
haven't done is I haven't locked down, like, oh, that's too much emotion, or, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that way. I don't do that. But it's been kind of a messy movement process, and then I just am messy, and I just go back to the gym,
This has been a
you know.
beautiful mess, and I am just honored to have, been there walking alongside you as overcome all of this. The other thing is you are the epitome of you don't look like what you've been through, right? Um,
No,
just looking at you, you wouldn't know you've went through, you had stage 4 cancer, you went through 15 surgeries, you had radiation, you got scar tissue. I mean, even
I
when you
got
came
two of
through.
the worst chemos that they make. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's just, it doesn't look, you all have this amazing glow to yourself. And, some of the questions that I had is like, how do you, overcoming adversity requires a strong support system. And you've already mentioned, like, this year has been a world of crap. Like, just to be honest, a bunch of shit, like abandonment and, betrayal and these things. And here you are still with this glow. And this is what this podcast is all about. It's like, how do you overcome that? We all have a will and a woe.
Yeah, I think how a person overcomes that is going to be really individualized to the person.
Understood.
But the things that they would share in common would be the will to
Mm,
overcome. If you don't
okay.
have the will, and I mean that at the deepest level, because one of the things that we do as people is we're great at giving lip service to what we think is the right thing to say.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if we dig deep into the self, like, so I don't get angry very often, right? I didn't used to get angry very often, about every 5 years or so. And when I
Mm-hmm.
would get angry, I would roll around in it like it was a big pile of money because it's an emotion and I get to have it and just throw a fit, and then it'd be over. But the 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 emotions of the more interpersonal emotions, like connected to people kind of emotions, like those things have been the challenge. And I think in this culture, because we don't teach emotional maturity, we don't teach emotional management, we have a very logical view of emotions most of the time. And a lot of people don't even allow themselves to feel their emotions. They'll say, oh, I'm sad, but they don't allow themselves to feel the sad, and so learning how to feel your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
you know, relaxing your shoulders, feeling whatever comes up, and maybe I feel it in a certain place in my body, and rather than being like, oh, I can't, oh, there it is, okay, now I know where it is, I'm going to stop, breathing into that. I have a fabulous therapist that I started working with, and she was really teaching me how to like breathe into that. And
Yeah.
it just seemed ridiculous to me at the time, like why am I breathing into this? Why would I want to give this life, right? That
Mm.
sounds like what it was giving it life. But the thing is it was already alive. And breathing into it allowed it to move, and like I might get all teary
Mm-hmm.
and you would think I would just have a meltdown and bawl my eyes out, but like then it would like dissipate, and initially I would be like, cool, okay, we're done with that, and she would be like, no, just see what comes up behind that.
Ooh.
I was like, shit, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to see what comes up behind that. And so, one of the things that I really saw a lot of was I would feel really angry. I would
Mm.
that would be like was my defensive measure, and what would come behind that is sadness, or this feeling of
Ah.
abandonment, or this feeling of betrayal. Because anger, and it makes sense because I already knew this,
Yeah.
anger is a mask for a lot of things. And the body uses it pretty well to move energy. Anger has a fast movement in the system, and so it will sometimes move the emotion a lot faster by being angry than if you were sad. And in the culture, we tolerate anger a little bit better than we tolerate sadness,
We do.
unfortunately. Uh, so So I think learning ways to feel your feelings and allow them to move. There's a difference between allowing yourself to have an emotion and perpetuating an emotion.
Mm.
So, if I'm continually reminding myself to be pissed off at so and so, or to be hurt by X, Y, or Z, then it's a perpetuation, which is different than if it's just organically arising in me.
Right.
And the challenge is that organic arrival of an emotion, because it always happens in the most inconvenient places. You'll be at a party and organically you're really sad. You're like, I can't be sad at this party. You might need to be. You might need to go spend a little bit of time in the bathroom, or
Yeah.
and work and just breathe into that. In the bathroom and let it move. Or some other methodology. Bilateral stimulation is something that she
Mm.
taught me. A lot of this, like while I'm talking or feeling. So there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of somatic workouts that are available. Working, with you do a lot of somatic stuff with me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been really helpful. Staying hydrated.
Yeah.
If you're not hydrated, and people think of hydration as being like just how much water do you drink.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of people I know that drink a lot of water are dehydrated too, because there's
Talk more
these
about that. Talk more
yeah,
about that. Because people think like, well, first of all, a lot of people don't even like water, but then the ones who are just pouring it down is just running through them. So
it runs
talk a
right
little
through
bit
them.
more about that. Talk a little
So
bit more about that.
your cells in your body have 24 salts, SALT, salts in them.
Okay.
12 of those are considered crucial. And
Mm-hmm.
so the marketing trade calls them the 12 essential cell salts.
Right.
If your
Cell,
cells
that's
don't,
CEL, guys. That's
yes,
CEL.
yep,
Cell salts.
CELLSALT. So,
Mm-hmm.
and if you Google that, you have to make sure that what comes up actually has all 12, because sometimes they'll only have 8. But
Oh, yeah.
you can get it in a liquid that you add to water. You can get it in the one that I take is made by Highlands. It's called Bioplasma, and it's a tablet that dissolves in your tongue. You got to take
Mm-hmm.
like three times a day. Most people don't need it that often. Once or twice a day is usually good for most people. But anyway, when your cells don't have those 12 essential cell salts, they don't actually uptake water properly. There's a lot of things they don't do properly, but uptaking water is one of them. And so when you perspire a lot or drink a lot of water, too, you lose those salts.
Absolutely.
And so you're going to the gym, you're working out, you're sweating, you're drinking water, but you're not actually hydrating, and then that water just runs right through you. You're peeing all the time, but you're not actually
Mm-hmm.
hydrated. At a cellular level, you're dehydrated. The vast majority of people that I see are dehydrated. Two things I
Yeah.
see most in people across the board:
Okay.
dehydration, the need for cell salts, and poor mineralization, and not the minerals that you get in a multivitamin, but trace minerals.
Trace
So
minerals.
any quality supplement that's got more than 70 trace minerals and ionic minerals in it is a good one to take. More than 70.
Awesome.
There's a couple that I like. There's one that I really don't like, but the other side says it's not good, but we're not going to get into all that.
Okay.
Those cell salts are so incredibly helpful just from a body standpoint, your cells' ability to respirate, hydrate, clean themselves, take good care of you, but also when you're cellularly hydrated, the body's more flexible, energy will move better. Energy is going to move better in general through a liquid than through a brick, if you think of it
Absolutely.
that way.
Yeah.
And if you're dehydrated, your cells are like little bricks,
Mm.
rather than, squishy little fluid things that we love. That's what we want. So cell salts are a really, really important thing for people to be taking. And sometimes people take electrolytes and think it's the same, but if it doesn't have the 12 essential cell salts in it, it's not going to be what you need. So if your electrolyte whatever has all 12 cell salts in it, then it will do the same. But there's a lot of things out there marketed as electrolytes, and they don't have the 12 cell salts in them. So they're
Wow.
different.
So those two
So
things is just like I mean, you already heard Julie talks to people all over the world. So majority she's saying is lack of hydration, dehydrated, and she's saying that lack of minerals. The other topic that's been huge is like people in sleep. And there was one thing that kind of like you and I were talking about where people aren't getting enough sleep and something happens. I think you said it started with the G, where your brain washes itself.
in the brain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you tell us just a little,
So
hit that a little bit?
So the other side started talking many years ago, decades ago, about like a fluid system in the brain. And I can't translate words I don't know,
Right,
and I didn't
right.
have a word for that. So when I would be talking to people, I'd be like, there's this fluid system in your brain, kind of like your lymph system. And then here, I don't know, a decade or so ago, they actually medically discovered it. So they've named it the glymph system, GLYMPH, I believe.
That's
And
right.
it is literally the lymphatic system for the brain. I definitely am
Mm,
not the expert on that. So it's definitely, you can
okay.
Google it and look all that up. But one of the things that they found in more recent research is that, like, they thought the glymph system just worked all the time and
Mm-hmm.
it's responsible for cleaning the amyloid plaques out of your brain, the things that
Mm,
cause Alzheimer's and dementia and that. But they recently found out that that glymph system really only cleans the brain when you're sleeping.
mm,
And it doesn't do it every minute that you're sleeping. You have to be in a certain state of sleep, and you have to have it for a certain amount of time. So, if you're a person who doesn't get very good sleep, you don't get very much sleep consistently, or you don't get
mm-hmm.
very good sleep. Maybe you sleep 8 hours every night, but you're not getting good quality sleep. Your glymph system is not washing your brain. That's really what it's doing. It's like running it through the car wash of your body and cleaning it out, those amyloid plaques. And
Mm-hmm.
then you'll have a buildup, and it will lend itself to memory problems, Alzheimer's, dementia, that sort of thing. So quality sleep is really, really important. Um, and most people know if they're getting
Yeah.
quality sleep or not, even if their baseline is off.
Yeah, in the world today, it's like, team no time off, team no rest, or team no sleep, and all this stuff. It's
Yeah, I don't
just
have any
like,
time to sleep. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, I don't have any time to sleep because I'm so busy. But
Mhm.
those are the key things, that essential things that we need for a quality of life. I mean, Julie, this is very powerful. It's just like all the things you've talked about, like how early on your parents were very supportive of you, and
Mhm.
how your mom was just like, it's not that she didn't, believe you had the skill set that you had. She just wanted to protect you, especially in those
Yeah, we.
times.
Mhm.
And so, like, as you became an adult and all this stuff, you did not embrace it, is from what I understood. You did
No.
not embrace it. However, you've been navigating this for quite some time.
Mhm.
And can you tell the audience, like, how long you've been doing the actual thing when you finally just said, okay, had this tantrum
I agreed under duress is what I call it.
under
Yeah, it was
duress? It's like
fine.
somebody tickling you to death or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
It was somewhere in the early 90s. I lived in Phoenix in the early 90s, and I started doing some channeling work
Okay.
for some people there. I don't like channeling work because that's the process of allowing an entity to like take over my voice box, and I like my control more than that.
Understood.
I did it for them. It was pretty interesting stuff.
Hmm.
But after that, I decided to translate instead, which actually works out better for most people. One of the things I learned in the channeling is that the other side uses terms that might be from 300 years ago. We were having to look up all kinds of stuff to figure out what the heck we were talking about. So translating actually works much better. And I have been seeing clients openly, like
Hmm.
where people know,
Yeah.
um, somewhere like I don't know, 93, 4, 5, somewhere in
Wow.
there. Um,
Wow. So
yeah.
what, 30 years, 30 years. And I it's been quite some time. So we would say that you do this thing.
Uh-huh.
It's I think my first interaction with you was 2012. Yeah, 2012.
Mhm.
And I had never had anything done like this before, but you definitely, the information that you gave me set me on the path of what I feel like was starting to navigate my soul's path, right? Um,
Yeah.
being able to pay attention to the signs, adhering to um, my health, especially when um, sometimes the medical doctors just, I feel like hey, this ain't I don't know, but I'm just going to diagnose you with this or say this to you, right? And
They're
I,
limited to.
yeah. And one of the things you do say is like, I'm not a medical person. So research, which a lot, again, I'm an inquisitive person, and I started to I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn, but I've always felt like there was more to me, like, walking with me, feeling
Mhm.
energies, um, and just how to navigate that. And so I appreciate you being in my life for those things. And I think that you are definitely on your purpose and serving your purposes to allow people to say that this is just not it, right? You have something else, and on the other side, or people on the other side to help you, right? Um,
Well, yeah, I mean the human experience that someone's having, like while they're alive, most of
yeah.
the time they're looking at it almost in a 1D or 2D. Like there's so much more to you.
Hmm.
Everybody's intuitive and connected. Your energetic field is literally built to exchange information with other people's energetic field.
Yeah.
You're not meant to be isolated, and we're meant to work as a collective. That doesn't mean that we all have to have the same opinion about something or the same feelings, but this. So I dated a guy actually I dated a multitude of people in my life, and I learned when I was a little kid that
Mm-hmm.
every human being deserved 100 million chances to get something right. That was one of the things that the other side told me.
Mm.
And so what that turned into as an adult was like I was the person who would stay with someone endlessly because they deserved
Mm-hmm.
100 million chances to get it right. I still struggle with that, actually.
Okay.
But I had this epiphany on the beach a long time ago. I was in this situation with a person, and the other side said, yeah, that's true. They do all deserve 100 million chances, but they don't all have to come from you. The
Oh, super.
collective, if everyone does a little, then it's not
Mm-hmm.
too much damage on any one person. They get their experience and no one takes, like everybody's got a different amount of hit that they can take and stay in balance. And I was like, well, you could have told me that like 10 years
A
ago and I'd have had
long
a
time
whole
ago.
different experience. But here I am, 2 decades later, still working
Wow.
on that same lesson.
Well, you just helped me
Sometimes.
because, one of the things that I did this whole strengths test, and two times I did it. And the first thing was that, empathy was a strength. And it's like
Mhm.
sometimes like a double-edged sword. It's like holding on to a knife because, that person is, pulling on a knife and your hand's being cut and you're being bleeding, but you're still giving chances. But that right there was really
So
powerful to say. It
that's
doesn't
an
always
important
have to come from you.
there's an important thing here that you're touching on. So empathy is a skill, right?
Okay.
Yeah, a
Right.
type of wiring. Most people think of it as a feeling, and that's fine. So
Okay.
when we have empathy for someone, it's different than sympathy, and it's important to understand the distinction. If Mary Jo, we're just going to make up a name. If Mary Jo is sad, and you're sad for Mary Jo, you have sympathy for
Right.
Mary Jo, right?
Okay.
If you have empathy for Mary Jo, then you can kind of relate to Mary
Hmm.
Jo. At least this is the way that I work with it. You kind of relate to Mary Jo's sadness because you can empathize with
Okay.
that. But if you
Okay.
are an empath, which every
Hmm.
human being has a certain amount of empathic ability
Hmm.
to them, for us to call someone an empath, I mean, for the other side to call someone an empath, they've got to have a lot of that wiring. And
Okay.
it's very fashionable these days for everybody to say they're an empath. And
Okay.
to some extent, that's true. But when you are using that empathic wiring, whether you have a little bit of it or a lot of it, you are picking up Mary Jo's sad and
Hmm.
processing it on your system. So you don't just feel sad for Mary Jo, you feel Mary Jo's sad. Not just, hey, I
Hmm.
can relate to that because I had a similar experience. Like I feel it and I'm processing it on my system. And so that's a beautiful gift
Hmm.
because when you take on some of Mary Jo's sad, she has less to process.
But how do
But
you not take on everybody's?
well, who even said that's helpful to Mary Jo? Mary Jo might say,
Oh,
"Please take my sadness." Like this is a common thing. People think
okay.
they're helping because they're making someone feel better, and you don't know. You could have just set them back, and now they got to start all over to get this terrible lesson because that's what it takes to get the experience. So if you're making everything nice for them all the time, you could be really setting them back because most
Their soul is on
people.
a journey.
Well, human beings. I mean, the other side always says that human beings are not evolved to a place. It's not a judgment, it's just a functional statement. They're not evolved as a whole. They're not
Okay.
evolved to a place where they have much drive or impetus to grow
Okay.
from places of peace and contentment.
Mm.
So they continue to create distressing things as a motivation for growth and change. The world
Mm.
does it. We do it as individuals. Like we'll stay if we're peaceful and content. Like we don't really do much. We're good.
Right.
We only work on ourselves and like shit looks ugly or, we're pissed off or something's not going the way we want it, and then we'll do something about it. And that's just kind of where we are. And I'm not saying it's true for everyone. There's degrees of that,
Yes.
but as a whole. So this empathy thing, like one, you might not know if you're really helping somebody or not. And two, the skill set shouldn't run you,
Mm.
right? So maybe it's helpful to Mary Jo for you to take on some of her sad, but are you allowing that energy to move through you or is it moving to you?
Ooh.
Big difference.
Yes.
Energy moves through me, not to me,
Stupid.
right? Because when it runs to you, then you're the stopping point. But if it moves through you, then that's great. Where it needs to go is to the universe. The
Mm-hmm.
universe is the ultimate recycling. There's
Mm,
plenty of room for anger and joy and sorrow, and it's all transmutable. It's just energy. So it moves through you to the universe. Let the universe decide, or whatever you want to call that, God,
mm,
Allah, Buddha, my dog is my God, whatever the thing
mm,
is for a person. The universe is a scientific component. Like, it's a cycling of energy. So when you
mm,
become a stopping point for your own emotions or energy or somebody else's, then again, you get that congestion that we were talking about earlier. So, the culture, particularly for women, the culture teaches that if you are valuable, in order to be valuable, you have to be emotionally useful,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
And functionally in service.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be serving others, and you have to be emotionally nurturing. And if you are
Particularly
not
for women.
nurturing, if you're not listening to people's problems, if you're not caring about their problems, like, you don't have any value. What kind of a woman are you? Like, there's a lot of feminine stigma around empathy, and women have a greater sense of empathy, generally speaking, but it's not isolated to them, and it's kind of taught to be almost their burden to carry.
Mm.
um, and oh, you're crying. I should, those should words. I should be there for you. I should listen to you.
Nurture,
And
yes.
I think it's really important as we work with our own emotional balance. Like, where is my balance point? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love you and I want to be there for you. But if it's taking me out of balance, if I'm not checking in with myself and saying, is this in balance for me at this time? There's no way to say, is it in balance with me without putting a time frame on it, because that speaks to all time, past, present, and future. So is this in balance for me at this time? And we all go through things like where maybe we're given a lot to marry Joe, and it's not technically in balance in the moment, but in the
Right.
bigger landscape of things, it's in balance in my life right now. So it's in balance for me to give to you more. And then later it might be in balance for me to receive more, or maybe I'm going to give to this person, but I'm going to receive from somebody else. So the balance is very big and communal, but it's very important for people to be checking in with themselves, like, are they in balance? So maybe they're playing a big role of empathy for Mary
Right.
Jo.
Understood.
If
So,
if that if it's throwing you off, then what are you doing for yourself? Are you going to the gym? Does that help you get in balance? Are you going to getting your nails done? Are you soaking in a bathtub? Are you planting some plants? Like, what brings you back into balance?
yeah, what are your tools that are bringing you back into
Hmm.
balance?
Yeah.
Understood. So, do you mind, with that being said, do you
Yeah.
mind sharing like some of your previews of what's happening here on Earth and how we can cultivate? I mean, it may be a whole nother conversation, but just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit.
So the Cliff Notes version, as
Yeah.
I understand it, so we were talking about human evolution,
Yes.
and I'm going to be doing a whole live piece, I think, on this. We're
That's
gonna,
right.
I think we're gonna give it away, so it'll be free,
All right.
a
We'll
live
talk
event,
about
and then there'll be a Q&A too that goes with that. But humans evolve. The soul evolves through the human experience, and the human plane kind of exists in a particular vibratory range, just like a certain radio station, exists in a vibratory range. And humans will incarnate into that range. Um, you might do relationship and man. Eventually, you're going to get enough souls that need to grow experiences in a human range that's higher than what the human range is.
okay.
And so if you look at the range that we've been in as like kindergarten through 12, K through 12,
Mm-hmm.
eventually somebody needs college. One person's not enough to build college for.
Right.
So there has to be a critical mass number of souls ready for that college in order for
Mm-hmm.
college to be built. And so that's what's happening is that the Earth plane is making a transition in its vibratory range to create a college.
Mm.
It is not just expanding on that, I don't know what you want to call it, that higher end range, though.
Yeah.
It's actually, like, if this is the amount of range, it's moving upwards. So that means that the lower vibratory range is actually going away. And
Mm.
so souls will not be able to incarnate into human bodies and
In
work
this lower
out
range.
or work through a lot of these lower vibratory range things that have been available in the human experience for a really long time. And so one of the things that's doing in the current model, because we happen to be living right now during the transition, which
Mm-hmm.
is incredibly challenging and not normally how that's done.
Mm.
So normally the planet pretty much wiped clean the vibrational change happens, and then a repopulace kind of happens. Current archaeological history doesn't show a lot of that. There's some of that shown, but anyhow, so we're living on a planet that is actually kind of birthing itself into a new vibratory range, and just like any birth, there's a lot of upheaval.
Right.
All of the systems that are on the planet, the foundational systems, have been built to serve that old vibratory range, which in the human body, the human system interacted with its environment like this. The soul connects to the body in a 7-chakra system with a hara line that runs right down the middle. I mean, there's thousands of chakras, but 7 primary chakras. And the new vibrational range actually runs an 8-chakra system. So, yeah, and that's a big part of what that lecture is going to be about, because there's a tremendous most people on the planet now have an 8-chakra system. They either were born with it. If they were born after the fall of 1993, they were probably born with a 8-chakra system. And the people that are choosing not to die, that didn't die, that are staying on the planet during the transition, are shifting to an 8-chakra system. So that new chakra sits like right here over your thymus. It used to sit right kind of in the first layer of the energetic body. In people who are born with an 8-chakra system, it's actually in the body like the other chakras. And so that's the primary difference. Well, that and the Kundalini, sort of like the well of your human experience energy, used to live down at the root chakra.
Right.
And that system was a follow the rules, follow the plan system. And it, you did that, and it kind of fed it like an old mercury thermometer. It rose on the system. So you have all of these, things that work that way. But the 8-chakra system has the Kundalini living here. So new chakra, new Kundalini space, and that feeds the system differently. Instead of rising from the bottom, it feeds it this way. And if you understand like what each chakra does, it kind of says, something we'll talk about in that thing, like you'll understand why like all of these young people don't work very well in this world. They're built to and so all of the foundational structures, like family structures, government structures, community structures, educational structures, all of those things are built to serve a populace of human beings that are follow the rules, follow the plan. And then, you had people before 93 coming in with an 8-chakra system, so it's kind of a blend in. The further back in time you get, the less of them there are, but like, path makers, if you will. Like I was born in 69, I was born with an 8-chakra system. I've got a client who's like 82, I think. She's got an 8-chakra system. She's born with it. And so, but the early people with an 8-chakra system really didn't fit. Like the world does not fit for them at all. But even even though the vast majority of people born since 93 are an 8-chakra system, the world's not built for them.
Right.
And you can see it in how the educational system has not been working for them. All those changes. Now everyone has an IEP.
Right.
If everybody has an IEP, then you're probably doing something wrong. Like you probably need to, like just
change it up.
What's happening there. The model for survivability, the model for growth, those things are all changing. So when you transition an earth plane with all the people on it from a 7-chakra system, it's like switching from like Windows to Mac. You gotta all the hardware is changing, and so all the programs have to change. Now you open up your Mac computer, and your Word document might look the same as it did on it, but the behind the scenes stuff is totally different, and how it got there is different, and how it works and how it serves and how it runs through all that hardware is very different. So all the people are having new hardware. That 8-chakra system, and that 8-chakra system is a resonance-based system, not a follow the rules, follow the plan. So is this resonant for you at this time? Which doesn't mean you don't get free will choice.
Right.
It's just a different fuel motivator. And so that's kind of what's happening on the planet is dramatic amount of upheaval. I mean, imagine that you're on a planet that's getting birthed. It gets squeezed. It gets squeezed, and then there's a release, and then it gets squeezed. There's a release. It's messy. It's loud. It's traumatic. Everybody's having to ditch all these lower vibratory things they've accumulated in their karma. Like they don't know why they're falling apart. It used to be that like if you were having some kind of a breakdown in your 30s, you could point to your childhood. Oh, this happened when I was 7, or this, and you might be stretching to do that now, but like there's a lot of emotions coming up in people these days that like they don't have. Hey, this happened to me, or a rock solid. they're struggling. They're picking through trying to find something that caused that. But a
Wow.
lot of it is just, it's coming up out of your karmic history. And
Mm.
also, this newer vibratory range is much more tangibly connected. So the
Mhm.
empathy level's higher, the
Mhm.
intuition is higher,
Mhm.
more connective. And so people are really affected by the collective conscious more now too. So,
Yes.
your life might be going fine, but the collective conscious is like really struggling. And so you're going to be impacted by that. So that makes it even more important these days to be like, okay, what's resonant for me? How do I keep myself in balance? Like for me, it's like working with you,
Yeah.
right? Helps me work through my own stuff, but also helps me
Yeah.
work through like all the stuff I'm picking up all the time from everywhere and who I'm spending time around. And
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you is those are ways to that you can also cultivate peace for yourself. But when you cultivate peace for yourself, you cultivate peace for others. So,
I wouldn't go as far to say that peace is the thing to cultivate. I think that's
Okay.
judgment that
Okay.
the culture kind of puts a lot of merit on, love and joy and happiness and peace and rainbow ponies, and those things all have value. Anger's got good value.
Mm.
Sorrow's got good value. All of these things are part of the human experience. So I wouldn't say it's okay for
Well,
somebody to want to cultivate peace, but your process of cultivating peace might be digging through an awful lot of bullshit that's definitely not peaceful.
oh.
And the culture has a very romanticized view of ascension and
Mhm.
spiritual growth. I mean,
It's an
really,
ugly thing.
it's
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 an
it's
ugly.
incredibly difficult. It's gut wrenching. It's you're picking at things. It's challenging. Ignorance is bliss, man.
Got it.
Like I'm not saying that
Yes.
anybody that's peaceful is ignorant,
No, I
but
get what you're saying.
being able to know yourself, your
Mhm.
self-awareness, allow yourself to have your emotions, but
Mhm.
don't let the emotional body run the show any more than you want just the intellectual body to run the show. Like there's got to, and like one of the things that's been going on to me in this world is like I'm ping-ponging around intellect,
Mhm.
and then I'm over here in the emotion, and then I'm in
Mhm.
my spiritual, spiritual body, and like, oh, I believe this, and then my emotional,
Mhm.
like it's been a lot of ping-ponging for a lot of people, and myself included, and trying to just find the tools that work now, because maybe what worked last week isn't working today. You know,
Understood.
if you can stay hydrated and you can keep your nutritional load up,
Mhm.
and your mineral load up, and keep your body moving. Well, the worst thing you
Mhm.
can do is like just sit. It's
Ooh.
it doesn't matter if all you can do is pace in circles while you talk on the phone, go into the bathroom and do jumping jacks, like any kind of movement. While
Mm.
you're watching TV, you can still watch your favorite TV show if that's what you like to do, but like,
Mm.
stand up and march while you're watching it. Do something that gets the
Understood.
body moving. Those things are very, very helpful. And then, breath work, very, very
Mhm.
helpful.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Breath
it's
work
it
has
it,
changed
it
my life.
again, breath work can really bring up a lot of emotional upheaval.
Mhm.
And so, people are like, oh, I just want to feel better. I want to be happier. Well, we all would love that. The pathway to that usually is fraught with like breath work that's got you bawling your eyes out,
Mhm.
kind of thing, or the processing of emotions that are stuck in the system. So the pathway to, I really think ideally the pathway is towards a broader spectrum of available emotions that you are allowed to have, right? And and
Mhm.
and the pendulum, how far the pendulum can swing. So,
Oh.
you can't love this high, this
Mhm.
intensely, if you can't equally hate this intensely.
Mm.
But and so when you trim down, like, oh, I can't hate, then the universe brings it into balance, and now your bandwidth is smaller.
Mhm.
And so people kind of get this idea that balance is managing to the middle. They're not too
Mm.
happy, they're not too sad, but that's
Mm.
not authentic. You're managing to the middle. So, like in my world, like I allow the full range of things, which can get real messy, like it is right now.
Yeah.
Um, that those, and I allow myself to have those emotions. But you brought up something earlier that I'm kind of trying to double back to here, and I kind of
That's
got off
okay.
track.
That's okay.
Having an emotion does not equal having an action. And you brought this up when you were talking about empathy. You
Mhm.
can have empathy for someone and you can feel that, like I might feel Mary Jo sad, and that doesn't mean I have to do something about it,
Mm.
right? The idea that
Yep.
I have empathy for someone and therefore must have said action, they're two separate things. It's the same thing when people say, oh, you say, why are you yelling at me? Well, you pissed me off. Those are two separate things. The emotion of being pissed off or being angry and the action of energy or the action of yelling, those are two separate things. And the culture and most people have a tendency to bind emotions and actions together. I care, therefore I do this. I'm angry, therefore I yell, or I give you the silent treatment, or I quit being your like. And those things are not bound together. You're the only one that does that. I can, love you immensely and not speak to you and not help you in the way that you want to help. I can feel a level of hatred. That's not something that comes up in me a lot, but like I could feel a lot of hatred and treat you just as nicely.
Mm.
I am in control of my actions.
Yeah.
My emotions might be happening organically, right? But I am in control of my actions.
Got it.
Or
So you
should
still
be.
have that
Well,
emotion.
try to be,
Right.
that
It
kind
should
of a
be.
thing.
Right, right. So again, it kind of goes back to that emotional management or what you said. Like I may feel some way, but that doesn't mean I have to act a certain way.
Right. I mean, the goal is to allow yourself to have the organic experiences that are happening. And I don't mean like, well, the universe put this in front of me, so I guess I must have to suffer through it. Like if you have an emotion that comes up, that doesn't mean you have to have a meltdown or throw a fit, but there's something to look at there for you. And are you in control of yourself? I really think the permission to be,
Mm-hmm.
I'm allowed to feel this way, I'm allowed to think this, I'm allowed to believe this, but then being in control of your thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
being in control of your actions, the master of you,
Yeah.
those are the things that are valuable to work on. And for each person, that's going to be different. But if you don't have that will to want things to be different for yourself, and I
Yeah.
mean, you have to really want it.
Yeah.
We can want all kinds of things and never do a darn thing for it. So we want it, sure, but we don't want it enough to do anything about it. You have to want it enough to do something about it.
To
I mean,
apply.
I want a villa on St. Martin's, but I don't want to do what it would take to get that right now. Like that
Understood.
prioritizing that. So, what does your want get married to actions and prioritization? You have to
Understood.
have that will. You can't,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people that identify, unfortunately, with their illness. They've become, who will I be if I get healthy? No one will care for me if I'm healthy, or who will I be if I let go of this trauma? I
Or
don't
this
even know who I'd be.
fear.
I've had this trauma
Yeah.
for so long. I've been the victim for so long. I don't know how to be anything other than the victim. Great. That's a great starting point. So time to learn to be something new. How do you be something else?
I love that. Well,
So
I want to take a pause here so people can know, so you can tell people how they can contact you and also how they can get, be a part of this free information that you're going to be sharing.
sure.
So go
Um,
ahead and.
so I have a pretty simple website. It's my
Mhm.
name, Julie North, North. So JulienNorth.com. That website is that's kind of the old website. The new one
Mhm.
has not launched yet. You can still access me and everything through there, but it looks a little dated, you can tell. The new website will have, when it goes live, we'll have the same address. There's a contact form on there. You use the contact form to reach out to my assistant. She'll get you
Love it.
scheduled for a session. On that contact form, though, is a thing that you can check mark that also puts you on the mailing list. So even if you don't want a session, you fill out the contact form and check mark that box to get on the mailing list. And the mailing list is how people find out about the workshops that are coming up, the free lectures. With the new website, that will also be the same platform for education. So we'll be doing all the classes on there rather than a separate platform,
Mhm.
like Kajabi or something that people use. So it will all be on one platform, and there will eventually be subscription services too for like subscription content, that sort of thing. Those things are coming. The website's in the works. The new website's in the works. Classes are probably going to roll out before that website even really gets fully launched. But that contact form that's on there is either how you get in contact with us to get an appointment or find out what's available or get information. Also get on the mailing list. And I don't send out thing to the mailing list unless I have something to send out. So it's not something that I do with a level of regularity at this point.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, we're going to give a class. And those people on the mailing list get first priority. And I will say every class I've ever done is sold out.
Well, I love
So,
it.
like, if you were waiting to see it on the website to sign up for it, if you're not on the mailing list, you probably won't get into it. So,
I'm
the
saying,
mailing list is definitely the way to go.
get on that mailing list. You
Yeah.
heard that. Get on that mailing list. So we're gonna leave with this. We're gonna leave with this. What would you say you would like your legacy to be, or it
Mm.
is?
Like on the planet with people,
Yeah, with planet, with the people.
I would love to see people learn to love themselves and others with authenticity,
Mm,
without the should. There's a level of I love you, but or I love you, but I don't love me, that goes on a lot. People make a lot of reasons for not being loving.
mm,
And I think I would love to see that transition. Not that because you love someone you have to do a certain thing, but a genuine feeling of love for the self. And in order to truly love the self, you have to be more self-aware. So
thank you.
self-awareness, self-love, personal growth, that's what that's what I would love to
Mm,
leave behind is a bank of information for growth for people, that they can know themselves better so they can love themselves better.
thank you,
Because when
Julie.
you love,
Thank you.
yeah, then you love other people better. It's all circle.
I love that. I love that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Um,
having me. I've loved this.
oh yes. You heard it. Julie gave you all the nuggets, and go follow her. Get on that contact page so you can know when she's giving out the classes, as well as when she launches her new website. It changed my life. I'm sure it will change yours. If nothing else, you will get that sense of a little bit more self awareness and a greater sense of authentic love.
Yeah, the guys don't pull any punches, do they?
No, they
They
don't.
tell it like it is.
They do not. Okay.